everyone. Welcome back to the On Track Show. Today, I am super excited to be talking about something I've never talked about on this show before, and I should have, because it's a big part of my practice. It's something I get questioned about all the time, which is intermittent fasting and just fasting in general. It's like the growing rage right now in the dieting world in this past year. And so I've asked my fellow Canadian, who is the expert on fasting, Megan Ramos. She has worked alongside Dr. Jason Fung since 2003, and we'll get into who that is and what that's all about. She's a clinical researcher by trade, with the majority of her research focusing in preventative medicine. Megan co-founded the Intensive Dietary Management Program with Dr. Jason Fung in 2014 after being diagnosed with diabetes herself, and was the program's first guinea pig. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to everybody listening today.
Yeah, so I love that you were the first, okay, let's try this on me and see how it's going to work.
Well, so it was just both Jason Fung and I were at sort of odd predicaments in our career. Jason was, going into his 40s. He was a kidney specialist. So my colleague, Jason Fung, is a nephrologist. So nephrology is the study of kidney disease. And throughout his career, he watched there be barely any kidney patients. It was so difficult for a nephrologist to get a job because not that many people had kidney disease, to there just not being enough because there were so many patients with kidney disease because of diabetes. And I actually started doing research in nephrology when I was 14, and we went from just having a few dialysis beds to hundreds. And the big boom was because of the dramatic increase in type 2 diabetes and that causing kidney disease. So Jason was getting really frustrated because he couldn't make the diabetic kidney disease better. If the diabetes just kept getting worse, then the kidneys were just going to get worse. And so it was really frustrating because you're there and you tell your patient you can't help them. And as a clinical researcher, I'm in my mid-20s. At the time, I was thinking about going to medical school. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to be a doctor because all doctors do are watch people die. I felt like that's all I was doing, was watching these patients that I grew to love die from their diabetes and telling them, well, I'm sorry, sir, or sorry, ma'am, there's nothing we can do for your kidneys if your diabetes gets worse. And well, guess what? Diabetes is thought to be a chronic progressive disease. So sayonara, it's bad news. And I got so depressed, I actually signed up to write my LSATs. I was just going to vacate medicine. I was highly motivated, ambitious, I was going to save the world. I just want to help people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. So let me just follow in my family footsteps and go to law school and stop trying to be the black sheep of the family. Because I was the only one that didn't go into law or business. But then shortly before I was supposed to write them, my dietary habits caught up with me, and I gained quite a bit of weight. It's funny how I gained weight. I went from being a university student who was studying all of the time and forgetting to eat often. So in hindsight, I was fasting all of the time, to someone in my mid-20s who thought to be the responsible adult and followed the Canadian food guide to a T and make sure that she was eating 6 to 8 times throughout the day to stabilize her blood sugars. And I blew up, like that character on Willy Wonka who ate that funky candy and just
That's what the Canadian food guide did to you, just and the rest of Canada as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like a character out of Willy. It was amazing. I gained almost 100 pounds. I'm 5 feet tall.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking you were one of those people, looking at you, I was like, oh, she was probably one of those people that stayed really thin but had type 2 diabetes. You just didn't show it because you look like you're just naturally such a small person.
No, I look chunked up, and patients, oh my gosh, I love them and just all wanted to punch them at the same time because they'd be like, you've gained a lot of weight, but it's distributed nicely. And I'm like, fuck her off.
Better.
I know. It's like you turn into a nicely distributed obese person. I don't know. And along with that weight came the diagnosis of diabetes. And after I started doing research when I was 14. So at this point I was 27. And then my own family history too is like a nightmare. So personally and professionally, I grew up just watching people that I cared about die from diabetic related complications. And I wasn't, like, I was just, call me insane, but I wasn't. I was going to be the first person ever to like conquer this. And I was hell bent on fixing it. If that meant that I had to walk around doing a handstand all day, I was going to develop the upper body strength to do so. It didn't really matter. And so fortunately, I was working with a goofy guy who was also going through his own life transitions and really just thinking outside of the box out of being desperate. And he had experimented with low carb diets with some of his patients, but he quickly realized that low carb just wasn't enough. It was certainly helpful and a huge improvement across the board, but it wasn't enough. And it was also in that day and age that we're going back several years, was low carb wasn't popular, it wasn't trendy. So it was more difficult to convince a patient to do it, and there was definitely a lack of support. Nowadays, my husband went to a Starbucks recently and he asked for heavy cream. And they said, "Oh, do you do the ketogenic diet?" Well, this is going back almost 9 years ago now. People would look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
So we really struggled with I knew he was doing this with the patients. I was actually trying to help a bit. I was trying to do it myself, but I was born in '84. I was born several years after the McGovern report. I grew up with two very busy parents, one very sick parent, and I was also spoiled. So if I didn't like the roast that was being cooked for dinner because I felt like I wanted pizza, my parents were too tired to argue with me and they let me order pizza. So I grew up eating like garbage. I didn't know how to cook. No one really cooked at home. We ate out most of the time. I didn't know what to do. So I struggled with low carb too. I sustained pretty much on pasta, pizza, and French fries for most of my existence up until that point. Well, Jason had a friend who was doing some fasting for spiritual reasons, but was getting great weight loss and an improvement in blood sugar levels. And he thought, Jason comes from a Catholic family. There's always he knew a lot of our patients participate in Ramadan. So he started to think, well, why is fasting? Like, it's obviously, it's not just for spiritual reasons, it's for therapeutic reasons. That's why every major religion incorporates a feasting and fasting alternate rhythm, over the course of the year between holidays. So he started doing a bunch of research and had his big aha moment, that it's not just what you eat, but it's also when you eat. Mm-hmm. And he gave me this stack of articles on religion and fasting and the therapeutic side of it, not just the spiritual benefits, but the therapeutic side of it. And just starting to think about it, I brought a strong background in physiology, and I had this aha moment. I went through all of the stages of oh my gosh, I found the cure, to being so mad, to hating my parents, to just being sad at the state of the world, to accepting that this is what I needed to do. And I started doing it, and I hated it at first. Everyone thought I was crazy. I thought my father was going to get me committed. He talked about getting power of attorney over me. I had this weird eating disorder. I had to do it in secret.
How were you doing it? Were you doing days, 24-hour fast? What were you doing?
The first month I did 24 hours of fasting. Now you have to keep in mind, for a couple of years leading up to that, I ate high carb. So I ate foods that really stimulated insulin production, and enough so for me to gain all that weight and develop diabetes. But to really throw all my hormones out of whack, and to be hungry in a constant state. And literally for 2 years, as I started eating more often, I just wanted to eat more all of the time, and I was just eating all day, nonstop. And so many people around me were eating the same. Our medical clinic, it was whose job is it to bring in cookies this Monday? Who's bringing in the donuts on Wednesday? And the people around me were eating nonstop. So for me, it was definitely more mind over the physical aspect of it. I was clearly surviving, but mentally that was the challenging part for me. But after the first month, I was getting results. So I was doing 24 hours 3 times a week. And I went from diabetic to borderline diabetic, almost pre-diabetic. My A1C went to 6. I was actually losing weight for the first time. I'd spent all kinds of money on fancy dietitians and personal trainers. And I did gain lean mass doing like training, but I wasn't losing any body fat. So I was actually getting results, and I thought, oh God, like this is working. Okay, I found something that's working. I have to change my attitude about it. And, you know, like, yeah, those people around me can eat all that stuff. Obviously, it's making them sick. And I don't want to be a sick person. Like, this is why, you know, you said you'd do anything to get rid of the diabetes. Looks like you have a shot. So commit to it. So after I got my first month's blood test back, I had that reality check with myself. And I was like, get your head in the game. You know, think of this as a therapy. And if you really dedicate yourself to it, you're not going to drag out this forever. You'll get it done. You'll get it over with. So I took 6 months and I treated it like each fasting day was like me going to the hospital for chemotherapy. Like I thought of it as a real therapeutic treatment. And there would be good days and there would be bad days. There would be days where I'd miss out a little bit on social events, or I wouldn't feel like going out because I wasn't feeling great. And there'd be days where I'd feel on top of the world. And I just had to look at it as my therapy. So in 6 months, my A1C went to 4.6%. I lost over 60 pounds. I lost 86 to date. But I gained a lot of lean mass too. So I've lost 86 pounds. So I'm at my lowest body fat percentage. I had no more fatty liver and PCOS, which were other issues that I was contending with as well. All in 6 months from just being dedicated. And I got rid of all of this. I was actually diagnosed with fatty liver when I was 12 and PCOS when I was 14, but I was a skinny fat person then. Right. And no one realized that. They just thought I was underweight, but I was obese still.
And were you eating, what kind of foods were you eating in between those 3 days of fasting?
So I definitely, my diet was a transition. It's been a real evolution. You know, I went from having a couple high carb meals a week to one a week to one a month to one a few times every now and then. You know, relying on berries to help me get through sweet cravings, but then not craving sweets anymore and not buying the berries. So it definitely wasn't perfect. I tried. I did my best that I could. But by the end of the 6 months, I was pretty low carb, pretty ketogenic. I'd say, you know, every other month I would go out at that time and have a little bit of a splurge. But it was different, you know, instead of going out to a pizzeria and eating a whole pizza, I would make sure that I had a salad. I was drinking water. I wasn't going to have wine or any cocktails. And if I was going to have pizza, I wasn't going to have a dessert. And I was going to make sure I ate all of that salad plus other charcuterie items to really make me feel full. So I would only eat a slice of pizza than a whole pizza. But since then, though, this is going back several years, I just don't have the cravings or desires as much. Like every now and then I do, and I realize it's more of an emotional situation. But it was funny because my bachelorette party was 3 years ago on January 1st. And my friends took me out for an Italian food. Despite my name and my appearance, I come from a very Italian family. I look like I'm adopted, but I'm a lot like these people. So I don't think I am. And I survived off of pasta. So my friends took me to an Italian restaurant. They're like, oh, what's the name before your wedding? And I ordered pasta and I just didn't enjoy it. Like I took like 2 forks full and I sent it back and I got a steak. And for someone who ate pasta, not joking, like at least 5 times a week, I haven't had it in 3 years. Like I just don't care for it at all anymore.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm totally the same. I have lost all interest in it. And I try and encourage people that it does take time. Like I would say it took me a couple of years to get to that point where that's not my treat anymore. To go out for pizza or pasta, I would never, that was not what my choice is now. I would go for ice cream instead.
It's totally crazy how things shift. When I got my great results, patients, I was at the time working on this prospective research study with 2,800 patients. And so they were all seeing me very regularly. And they saw the transformation and they were like, honestly, we don't care what you're doing. We want to do it. And I think Jason and I are sort of blessed because we are in the city of Toronto. Toronto's the most multicultural, diverse place in the world. Over 50% of the population wasn't born in Toronto. So you have a lot of people who, when they were back home in their home countries, they were fasting. It was part of their religion. It was part of their culture. It wasn't foreign to them. And so like when I had a Muslim patient come in for the first time, and he's like, but I can drink water? This is easy. This is a joke, because during Ramadan, like, so patients were very willing, and then the willing patients got good results, which inspired the unwilling patients, because there was no way they could turn their heads at 100 patients who would reverse their diabetes.
No.
So we were, I think, geographically sort of blessed, and nowadays, like, low carb is so popular. Ketogenic diet, which is like extreme low carb, is popular. I'd say I'm in a state of ketosis. Regardless, I don't really censor my carbs, but I don't eat starches, I don't eat grains, but I will never limit the number of Brussels sprouts that I eat.
I'm the same.
Yeah, so I eat a lot of unrefined, non-starchy, fibrous carbohydrates, and so I'm in ketosis. Really not trying to get into it, but really I don't restrict my carbs to 20 or less. But I find that even at 60 or plus grams of non-starchy fibrous carbs, I'm in a deep state of ketosis. So I'm getting those potential benefits. So the patients saw me and they begged, and so we sort of developed this little program. We thought was like a little pilot program, and eventually some higher power was going to get really mad at us and make us stop. But we just got sort of bombarded, and my colleague Jason, I think he spent like every night, you're so motivated, you're seeing patients get better for the first time. He's been like every night writing these books, the obesity code and the diabetes code, and he's like, I've got to get like what we're learning and this knowledge, and I've got to get it out there. So, and then they became kind of popular, and it's just the last couple of years have just been really crazy. But I'm really happy. In the end, I get to do what I always wanted to do, help people and actually help them get better. Just a totally different approach. I find, though, like you, most people look at me and they're like, what the heck does she know about being overweight? So I find that I have to share, like, on my phone in clinic, I keep a before picture of myself. Yeah, I'm like, this is legit, like, this is me. Like, I've got like tattoo markings you can't make up.
Right. So photoshopped. So fast forward from kind of that 3-day-a-week fasting, is that still basically when somebody comes in who's insulin resistant, type 2 diabetic, is that the starting point, is 3 days a week of 24-hour fasts?
That's usually where we start people, or 36 hours of fasting. Sometimes we'll encourage them to skip dinner or skip that one meal a day. So most often people do a 24-hour fast, from dinner tonight until dinner tomorrow. So during a 24-hour fast, you miss 2 consecutive meals. So usually we're so busy in the morning, work days, it's easy to skip lunch at work. So most of the time people do skip breakfast and lunch, and we encourage them to try to eat an earlier dinner if possible. If they can fast from lunch to lunch, we encourage that, but that's not suitable for everybody. So dinner to dinner, especially if they can do an easy dinner. But for a 36-hour fast, you would just simply skip that dinner. So if you think about it throughout the weekdays, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you wouldn't eat, but Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, you'd eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you'd be fasting, for example, from Sunday after dinner until Tuesday morning. So 36 hours sounds kind of wonky. I'm like, we should have totally coined this a better phrase, because it's really confusing, but it's very clear cut. You eat, you fast, you eat, you fast.
Right. And what about with somebody, because I think of myself, it almost just puts me in a state of panic when I just hear you say that, is with bad blood sugar issues like hypoglycemia. Is it okay to have someone go 24 hours if they're not feeling well? You just push through it?
So there's different levels, and so with the patients, we adjust their medications, or if we are not in the position where we can adjust their medications, we start off a lot more slowly. Like we go from eating 6 times a day to 3 times a day, and cutting out snacking and gradually cutting out meals, just to be very, very cautious so there's no hypoglycemia. In the clinic, where we do have control over the patient's medications, we do drop them to make their blood sugar levels go higher to prevent against hypoglycemia. We see them very regularly at the start, because some people come off of 100 units of insulin overnight, and some people take 6 months. So it's very different for the individual depending on the severity of their insulin resistance. In terms of not feeling well, like if you feel just like you have the flu, we encourage our patients just to push through. Mm-hmm. If you feel like you can't keep up with your daily activities, you don't feel comfortable driving, then call it quits, and let's start off doing something more modified and work our way up to doing a 24-hour fast. And if nausea is our absolute red flag, if you feel nauseous, you must call it quits. That, and of course, and actually getting a low blood sugar levels, but we're very cautious with that approach. Mm-hmm. I always tell people that fasting is like a muscle. I always joke, my husband, I met him in San Francisco. I dragged him to Canada, and we spent 3 years on an airplane, and not being active whatsoever. And so when he got to Canada, I was like, oh, okay, we're living downtown by like 10 of the hottest gyms in the city. So I like created this presentation for him so he could pick the gym and get in shape. And he's like, Megan, we sat on our ass, for 3 years. Like, get over yourself. He said, tomorrow morning, let's stretch and see how you feel. And I stretched and I was sore for 3 days. Yeah. He says, yeah, we're not spending like $400 a month at a gym for you. Forget it. Like you got to start off. But it's different for everybody. Like, my best friend and I can go to the gym and I can deadlift my own weight. And she can deadlift, an extra 20 pounds. And that's and we started doing weight training at the same time. So it's, everybody has their different capacities for things. So, you might really want to do a 24-hour fast, but your body might just not be, your fasting muscle and your body might just not be there yet. So, getting back to the basics, like our grandmothers, how they grew up, and grandparents, you ate your meals, you didn't eat a snack before dinner to make sure you had your appetite for dinner. You sure as heck didn't eat after dinner, because then that meant you didn't eat enough of the good meal on your plate. So going back to basics, my grandmother, she is so funny. She's like, your dad didn't get fat until he moved out of his house, out of my house. She's like, I never sent him to school with all that junk food that you guys go to. He was lucky if he got an apple. He certainly didn't eat junk. Potato chips were for big occasions like Canada Day family barbecues or a special treat for someone's birthday. She's like, I didn't have a cold cellar full of potato chips like you guys have at your house. My mom would go to Costco and buy each of us our Costco sized bag of potato chips, and we eat them because it was a Tuesday. Like, there was no rhyme or reason. And so just sort of going back to the basics, and and just even doing that cuts out a lot of the carbs that we'd otherwise consume throughout the day. And then work on teaching the patients, then to shop around the aisles at the grocery store and eat real foods. And then once they're comfortable, their blood sugar levels are stable, then maybe cutting out breakfast or cutting out dinner and doing more of what we call like a 16-hour fast, where you just skip one meal a day, and working our way up to 24 hours. I believe most people are capable of doing any fast they like, but everyone has to start off somewhere different.
Yeah. And so what's the medical benefits of a 24-hour fast compared to an intermittent fast where it's just a 16-hour fast, which seems to be what's most popular with people? I know I put it into a lot of my meal plans where you just skip that morning meal and you don't eat till noon or whatever. And it seems like that's such an easy way for people to fast. But is there a difference in the benefits that you're going to be getting? Is something else happening in the body?
Well, so it just sort of depends on where you are in your health journey. For someone who's very healthy or moderately healthy, or just has a little bit of metabolic issues, a few extra pounds, a 16-8 is fantastic. You know, it will drop those extra few pounds, it will regulate the hormones, you'll feel great. It's something that I practice. Now I'm coming off of the holidays and moving and eating out at every restaurant in Toronto, so I'm almost 36 hours into a fast right now, or just under 36. So it's, you know, so periodically doing one of these longer ones after holidays to compensate can be helpful. But the, you know, why I would ask a patient to do a 24/16 is if that patient's more metabolically unwell, has more hormones that are out of whack, has struggled with insulin toxicity, so high levels of insulin in the body, essentially poisoning the body and causing the disease for a longer time. We really target patients with high insulin levels, and fasting really suffocates the insulin levels and it keeps them down. And when you keep an insulin level down for a long enough time, it's suffocating it, and it sort of breaks that barrier where your insulin levels aren't going to go up very much. So if you think our body's like a thermostat, everything in our body's like a thermostat. So it's always trying to keep things at the same, the thermostat tries to keep everything at the same temperature. So it will turn on the heat, it'll turn on the fan, the air conditioning to bring your room back to 73 degrees. And our bodies, you know, get so used to having an insulin level that's so high, it tries to fight it. So, you know, when you're doing sort of a 16-hour fast, it's not really powerful enough to fight that set point. But a longer fast, like a 24-hour fast, and sometimes that's not enough, sometimes a 36-hour fast is absolutely necessary to fight that set point and keep the insulin level so low for a sustained period of time that you actually drop the temperature on the thermostat for the insulin setting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good analogy to say it, because I think that it would be so hard to do the 24-hour fast, but it is more therapeutic, I think is what you're trying to say. Like, it is more like, if the sicker you are, probably the longer you should be going. So let's go the other way for somebody that has been fasting like yourself. You've lost the weight, you've been doing the 3 days a week, you're at a good spot. Is there like a maintenance that you should be doing? Like, what do you do when you're not like just normal every day? What are you doing?
Usually I stick to 16/8, and I eat breakfast, but I wake up at 4:30. I do all my emails. We have some partners that we work with in the UK, so deal with any issues related to them. Then I go to the gym, come home, shower, eat. So I'm awake for a good 4 hours before I eat, and then we'll eat like a late lunch, sort of usually around 2 or 3 o'clock. And that's what we do. If I ever overdo it, then I will take a period of time and do a little bit more in therapeutic fasting, like I used to when I was healing my metabolic syndrome. So the last Christmas season, I celebrate Christmas. I didn't overdo it. I was in Orlando with my husband's family. Everybody was sick. None of us feasted. So in January, I just kept up my 16/8. This December, I was home, I moved, I had visitors, my mom was sick. I ate out solely at restaurants, and I stuck to really great options. There's great options, but you never know how they prep things. You'll get a balsamic vinaigrette and you can taste the sweetness in it. Or even like I had a rotisserie chicken, and I could tell it was brined in sugar just because I'm so sensitive to sugar now. So you've got all these hidden things in your food. I gained a little bit of weight. I felt bloated. I felt tired. So despite my best efforts at eating out, it was not a great end result. So now for the month of January, I'm taking advantage of the slow social time of the year. And I'm just for this month, I'm just going to do the therapeutic fasting that I used to do until I feel better. And it's different for everybody. You know, a patient of mine might not have eaten out as much as I did, or maybe they didn't indulge too much, but they're feeling off. And I usually tell these patients then who are in the maintenance mode, I guess you'd call it, to do just the therapeutic fasting until they feel good again. So if that's like a week, or if it's 2 weeks, or if it's a month, just until they feel good again. And I can you can eventually gauge it after time. Like I know if I go away and I'm eating at restaurants because I'm at a resort, or in other people's company and they're cooking and there's hidden sugars, I can gauge it. It's like, okay, this is probably pretty bad. It's going to take me a week or 2 weeks, till I get back on track. So I just encourage people, just do it till you feel like your old self again, and then just get back into your 16-8 routine.
Yeah. And I don't know if you find this, but I find because I use it a lot with clients to help them initially to lose the weight, more intermittent fasting than the 24-hour. And I see it work so good in the beginning. And then I have had a few clients who it does start to drive the thyroid down, or it starts to mess negatively with their hormones. And my theory on it is that we're going into, we're in a caloric deficit overall. If you're looking at the week or the month, you're in this caloric deficit. And what does that start to signal to our bodies at a certain point when there's not a lot of body fat on us? It's going to tell the body to hold on to the fat and drive down metabolism, just cool it down. Like, we don't want to be burning up the little bit of fat that we have left on our body, kind of a biological thing that happens. So at that point, should somebody just stick with the intermittent fasting? Can they still do like a 24-hour fast every couple of weeks? Like, is there kind of a sweet spot if somebody's hit that spot?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a concern. I actually work with a lot of professional athletes, and they're, a whopping 7% body fat, but they're trying to fast for therapeutic reasons, which does mean sort of entering that 24-hour plus zone of fasting. But I mean, their whole livelihood too depends on them maintaining their muscle mass, being in good physical shape, not feeling tired, so we've got to keep their thyroid, their hormones, everything's got to maintain where they are. We just have to use a fasting. So we really up the fat to really make sure that they're not going in a caloric deficit. So I work with George St. Pierre, for example, from the UFC. And, for him, it's like really increasing that fat, on your eating days. If he typically eats, like 3,000 calories a day, then we're adding another 1,000 to 1,500 calories of just fat into the diet. And I think a lot of people think of fat and think butter, eggs, bacon, but it's not. It's utilizing lots of olive oil, cooking vegetables with coconut oil, utilizing avocado oil. If you have an avocado, slice it up and douse it with 2 tablespoons of olive oil.
Right.
Or MCT oil, and just a variety of ways just to sort of sneak these fats in. And that way we're able to sort of maintain their hormone levels. We're able to maintain, their thyroid function and their body weight too. So I have someone like GSP who fasted for his colitis, and we were getting into the point where we were doing 4-day fasts, and he was able to train and feel good and be able to maintain his body composition throughout everything.
Wow.
So of course we don't do like that. It's not a weekly thing. He's not doing that weekly, everybody. It's every like 4 weeks we try one, and then trying to do like maybe 2 24-hour fasts a week. Whereas with someone who's trying to lose weight and who's diabetic, we would try to do more than 2 a week. So it's definitely scaling it back, but really finding creative ways to add in that fat. A tablespoon of olive oil is 115 calories. It's 14 grams of fat. So, and it's really easy to eat a lot of olive oil. I drink olive oil. It's a great way to add in fat and add in calories to sort of maintain the weight if you're looking to do a longer fast.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's a really good thing for my listeners to hear, because women, they hear, oh, I can fast and lose all this weight, and this is what I'm going to do. And then they end up going into this starved state eventually, and it starts to backfire. And I remember talking to Jimmy Moore on his podcast, and he was saying, no, you've got to eat those calories after you've fasted. Like, you can't not make up for them, right? Especially once you've lost the weight. In the beginning, that it's good, it's therapeutic, it's going to help with your insulin resistance and your type 2 diabetes, but then there is that fine line. And fat is the most calorically dense macronutrient, so it's the easiest way to get those calories in without adding a bunch of sugar back into your diet either.
And it's so important for normal hormone function too, is to get the
Totally.
fat. And so especially when you're on the slender side of things, if you want to stay balanced and, not push your body into a spot where it's too uncomfortable, you've got to eat that fat just to help aid you hormonally. And so that's the thing I struggle with the most too, with patients, males and females, is making sure that they are feasting and fasting. And like feasting doesn't mean like you're eating to
Donuts.
the point where you're taking off your donuts, having to take off your pants because you decide to eat that third steak of the night. It's not that, but just like eating, enjoying proper meals. My patients who fast a lot but who gain weight are those who on their eating day are eating like bunnies. If you can't do that, you have to eat to lose weight. You have to eat to lose weight and to maintain your metabolic rate.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I love it because I can't, like, I totally agree with that. There's got to be both. And that is the best way to lose weight. And women don't know that you make your hormones through good cholesterol, and good cholesterol is coming from good fat. So you have got to get that fat in there. And for fertility, like if you're in your fertile years, you got to be really gentle with that system. And if you're starving it all the time, it's going to drive down fertility, right? So I think that's so important for everybody to hear. So big question here that I know everybody wants to know, including myself, is what about when there's a lot of different ways of fasting right now? One of the most popular, of course, is the bulletproof fasting, where you have the coffee and the fat in the morning. And so a question is there things like as long as it's just fat, are you breaking the benefits of the fast?
So it depends on what your goals are. So if you're a healthy individual, looking to maintain your weight, but get some of the hormonal benefits of fasting just to stay healthy, then having a bulletproof coffee is perfectly fine. It's a great way to get fat in. It's not going to raise your insulin levels. And, it's really that high toxic levels of insulin that creates a lot of disease. So the fat is not going to do that. So enjoy your bulletproof coffee. If you're looking to lose weight though, when you're in a fasted state, I know this sounds really gross, but you want to be feasting off of like your fat here and your fat here, and you don't want to be feasting off of your fat here when you're in a fast. So if you are looking to lose weight, it's better to sort of avoid that. But if you're healthy, it's a great way to get fat in. I know we're so busy nowadays. One of my biggest issues with 2018, and my husband and I joked yesterday. I said, if we ever win the lotto, we're hiring a personal chef, because we get so busy, there's no time to cook, you're not really eating or fasting. And I ended up a hormonal wacky mess in the middle of the year, and we really had to buckle down and make meals a priority again. But the fat, it's so the fat is great because you do get busy. So drinking those fatty coffees or fatty teas is a great way just to make sure you're getting in everything you need throughout the day if you're healthy and looking to maintain.
Yeah, a quick fat bomb down, right? Yeah. So bone broth, then those any sort of a little bit is okay, but that is intervening, you burning your own fat off your body then until that's burned up. Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Because it's, it is all the rage. I do it. I that's how I intermittent fast. I find it's much more tolerable, but I also don't need to lose weight. So I find it's
I had bone broth today, and I'm in the midst of a fast. I didn't drink it all day long. I woke up at 4:30. I had it at 12:30, just to sort of help break up my day. And it makes you feel good. It's great for you. So, if you're not combating insulin issues, then why not?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well, I love it. And so do you guys work with people from all over the place? Or is it just in clinic?
No, it's all over. Actually, our clinic is very, very tiny. Now I'm spending a lot of my time trying to educate other doctors on how to do fasting with their patients so I can share what we've learned. So we really don't do too much in-clinic stuff anymore. But most of our programs online, we felt that it was so unfair that we couldn't see non-Canadian patients. And especially we're spoiled. We have great healthcare. When I met my husband and just sort of learning about his mom and her healthcare in the US, I was just brokenhearted, and I felt so grateful. And I felt bad for every time I complained about Canadian healthcare. So it just this need to help these people and share. And of course, they can't come to Canada always, and medically, legally, we can't treat them, but can we help them out with fasting? Absolutely. Can we teach them about when to eat and all of that stuff? Absolutely, wherever they are in the world. So I've trained a team of people who worked with us for a long time, and we actually work with over 10,000 people worldwide nowadays, and it's all online, and it's a video conferencing. And if you don't have internet, that's not a problem. You can always call into your appointments as well. But we do these small group appointments so people get a community. It's kind of neat because I have patients from all over that connect, and they go on vacations and stuff together, and they form their own fasting community in their personal lives. So we do online counseling, and we have an online self-guided program. So if you're someone who's a little bit more reserved, doesn't want to share with a group, is figuring most of it out on their own, doesn't really need that much support, we have an online self-guided program as well.
Wow, that's great. And I'll put the link in the show notes, but it is idmprogram.com, correct?
Yes.
And so if you're looking to start incorporating fasting into your own regime, I highly suggest checking it out. It's definitely one of the best programs that's out there that incorporates fasting. So, and they're doing it right. You guys have done your research, you're doing it right. And you guys are really helping a lot of people through it. So it's amazing.
Thank you, Karen.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Megan.
No problem. Thanks, Karen. And happy fasting, everyone.